Well, hello and welcome to another Tyrrell's Classic Workshop. And as I keep saying on these videos, I can't say it enough. It's the way the chips fall that how we can make these videos. We work around the cars that we've got in. This is a working workshop. This is first and foremost a business repairing exotic cars and restoring them, and sometimes not so exotic cars on occasions. But so this time round we're doing something just a little bit different, which is no problem for me because I'm extremely emotionally invested in this particular make and model of car, and that is the Lamborghini Countach. Now, I'm going to give a little bit of history rather than focusing on the technical things, just put a little bit of my history and its history into context. Let's start at the beginning. In 1973, when I was 10 years old, my dad used to buy these things, which is motor show reviews. They were very useful for the British Motor Show Review. They've highlighted the good and the great and the mundane of the automotive world. And looking back, they're very, very interesting. They're quite revelatory. Some of the prices and how they relate to each other make very interesting reading 50 years on. This car is no exception. So it was one particular photograph, but I'll just let me do some price checking on some cars. So we have a Di Tommaso Pantera, which was a credible Italian exotic. Obviously the Argentinian Alessandro Di Tommaso. Tom Chiada styled it. Ford Cleveland V8, but still, you know, an exotic car by any standards. £6,596 would have bought you a Pantera, probably a Pantera L. Then we have the Ferrari 365 GT4 2+2, which was Ferrari's 2+2 Grand Touring V12 car of the time. That is a princely £12,961. Then we move on to the Rolls-Royce Corniche convertible, which was just about as posh, as expensive as it got in 1973. And that was a heady £14,884. Then we move to the photograph that started it all for me. This photograph here, the Lamborghini Countach, for a heady £16,314, more than a Rolls-Royce Corniche convertible, round about 10% more. I mean, staggering figures. A Mercedes-Benz 450 SEL, a mere £9,582. So I think the Countach was probably one of the most expensive cars in the world, excepting for the extreme hand-built Rolls-Royce Phantom 6, which was always stratospheric. And I don't know what price the Mercedes 600 Grosser was at that time, but it's in very, very, very upper echelons of car prices. And that photograph from 1973 put something in my mind, and I didn't realize this, but my mother, my late beloved mother, actually reminded me that I was obsessed with Lamborghini Countaches as soon as I saw that photograph. It looks like a spaceship. It was a spaceship. It still is a spaceship. And who would have thought all those years on, so that's 1973, that's 51 years ago, who would have thought I'd be standing in my own business with 5 Countaches in the workshop for work? Staggering, really. It's a boyhood dream plus. So we have unfortunately not got one of every one of the Countach generations in here. We couldn't quite be that clever about it. This is purely cars that come in for work. We don't plan it. It's just the way they're booked in and the scheduling. The Countach story started with that car in 1973. The extremely clean Marcello Gandini lines were his starting point, really, and then Bob Wallace found, and it had a 5-litre version of the 4-litre engine, which was uncharted territory for Lamborghini. They had the 4-litre engine since 1965, 66, which was largely in unchanged form, apart from the carburation and port sizing and valve timing, was the same engine right the way through until 1980. actually, 1981-82. But it started life with the development of the 5-litre engine in that original Countach prototype. The radiators are mounted here at the top of the rear haunches. And it was very quickly discovered by Bob Wallace as he did some research and development on that car, following its shock preview at the Geneva Motor Show in 1971, I think. And obviously it was getting closer to production by 1973, which is why Lamborghini were even able to give a price to buy one. But the original car was the 5-litre, and Bob Wallace quickly discovered when he was driving around northern Italy in the summer, which is 35 degrees C of anybody's money, he discovered that the cooling system was woefully inadequate. So first port of call was to put these ducts and vents all over the back of the car, and they actually brought the cooling system something like under control, allied with a particularly deep, for the time, radiator core in order to dissipate as much heat as possible, one each side. So there's quite a bit, it was a bit of a plumbing job to actually plumb the engine in, the 5-litre engine. But what they discovered was the 5-litre engine was prone to failures. The bottom end of the engine wasn't strong enough. The block suffered from feathered main bearings, etc. The aluminium was actually moving around because of the stresses inside it, which happened to a greater or lesser degree on a number of classic aluminium classic car engines, actually. But it was too much. So they had to can the 5-litre engine and go back to the 4-litre, the tried and tested 4-litre, evergreen 4-litre engine. And that's how the Countach eventually came to production in 1974. It had the narrow Pirelli tyres on with a fairly simple design of wheel, of magnesium wheel. And that was because, as I've said before on other videos, Pirelli was at the cutting edge of tyre technology at the time, and Lamborghini had the inside track to their best technology. So Walter Wolf wanted a very special Countach, I think in 1977. This is all by memory, so forgive me if I get the exact years and dates wrong. And Lamborghini came up with, in conjunction with Pirelli, came up with the predecessor to the P7, the tyre that changed the world, really, in terms of exotic cars. And that necessitated the famous flared wheel arches, which are now probably more recognised on Countaches than the original non-flared ones, dare I say it, and those ridiculously wide 345 section rear tyres. But Walter Wolf's car eventually, they made something special for him because of his Formula One influence, etc. at the time, and they productionised the changes they made to his car, and the LP400 S, still the 4-litre engine, same basic concept, but with the wider wheels and tyres. As technology, the low-profile tyre began to come in as opposed to the large section. I think there was 70 section, the tyres on the original LP400. I mean, laughable today, you know. There isn't a Ford Fiesta you can get with 70 section tyres, never mind an exotic supercar. So these came in, and we've actually got three examples of the 4-litre LP400 S, which came out in 1979, I think. And again, this is all digging deep. And we got 3 of those examples in. This particular car has come from the Far East, from Malaysia. We've done a full engine rebuild on this car and some other bits and pieces. We've rebuilt the suspension. We've done a mechanical restoration, full restoration on the car. And it's turned out rather well, dare I say it. It's driving beautifully. It's an original right-hand drive car. I think they made 19 right-hand drive LP400 S's, and we've got 2 of them here. So we've got 10% of total LP400 S right-hand drive production in the workshop, which is a funny little thing in its own right. But how wonderful for that schoolboy, that 10-year-old schoolboy, looking at that photograph and thinking that is otherworldly, to actually be up close and personal and having learned so much about these cars for having worked on them for 40 years. Which brings us on to the blue metallic car, Blue Acapulco, which was a standard factory colour at the time. That car is very low mileage. I think we had it in for some, we did an inspection on it, first of all, before it got sold at Bonham's auction. The car came back following the auction. We did some mechanical restoration work on the car and repainted it, had it repainted by Ryan at Cheshire Prestige Paintworks. And that was a lovely job. He took the car on his European tour, which I think was 2,000 or 3,000 kilometers. It was quite mileagey. And the car had only done about 6,000 kilometers from new before that. So we did a full recommission on it. He completed the trip very successfully. And the car has come in for a further tranche of restoration work, sorting out things like the headlining, which sags on a lot of classic cars actually as it unsticks itself from the roof, things like that. So it's back in for a second further tranche of work. And we've got the yellow Countach, which is also lives in this country but has a Far East connection, and we're doing a lot of restoration work on that car. It's quite a well-known car. Again, it's a right-hand drive car. It originally started life in oro metallizzato, a gold metallic, and I think it would look stunning in that colour. It's currently yellow, of course. It was colour changed some years ago. I'm trying to persuade the owner to go back to the gold metallic, but they also don't look too shabby in yellow, it has to be said. So, your opinions, please. Then we have the development of this, which is the 5-litre Countach S. I feel like Jules Holland walking around a series of acts on later with him, pointing to the various artists and things. But this is a 5-litre Countach S. So this came out in 1982. What Lamborghini did was eventually engineer the bottom end of the 5-litre engine to make it more reliable. And they brought out the 5-litre Countach, a very rare car. I think they made 300 in total, of all left-hand drive, right-hand drive, etc. I think from memory, 23 right-hand drive. So again, a very rare car. The 5-litre engine, they did have some difficulties with that when it first came out. They had porosity of the block with the oil galleries, few things. So they were pushing the boundaries a bit, really. But they got it to work. The 5-litre S is sort of the Lamborghini equivalent of the Berlinetta Boxer, which was contemporaneous with the Countach at that time. And what manufacturers had to do was find extra capacity. So the engine went up from 4 to 5 litres. Ferrari went up from 4.4 to 4.8 litres in the Boxer, or 5 litres. The 5-litre engine was a way of not having to reduce performance, because things like catalysts were coming in, air injection pumps, different valve timing, so that the engine couldn't breathe quite as deeply. They had to trim everything back, so they had to find extra horsepower somewhere, or even equivalent horsepower, and that was why Lamborghini went up to the 5-litre, Ferrari went up to the 5-litre 512 Boxer. There was a lot of that going on at the time, and Jensen did it when they went from the 6.2-litre Chrysler engine to the 7.2 in the Interceptor. So there was a lot of chasing horsepower really going on at the time, and the 5-litre Countach is still fast. It was at the time, and it still is now, but of course at the time it was very fast. But it's in the real world, it's not massively faster than the 4-litre, and that's because it's a more torquey engine. It's a slightly different beast to the 4-litre. Looks visually similar in the engine compartments. We've got the 6 horizontal carburetors on these Countaches to work with the height of the rear lid and everything else, to try and get as much airflow as possible. They're very difficult, very tricky to tune and work on, because the gap between the airbox and the inside of the car, particularly with hot coolant pipes, is very difficult to get in there with a measuring instrument, my trusty rubber hose pipe or whatever it is. But anyway, we get there. Then the black car that we have in is a US-spec Quattrovalvole. So Lamborghini, again, wanting to keep Ferrari, were bringing out the Testarossa. Lamborghini had to up the ante. So in 1984, I think 85, Ferrari brought out the Testarossa, and Lamborghini again just decided to to do a few things. So Giulio Alfieri, the ex-Maserati engineer, was now head of engineering at Lamborghini, and he, very clever engineer, he upped the CC from 4.754, 4.8 in the 5 litre. Even though they called it a 5000 S, it was actually 4.7 odd litres. He upped that to 5.2 litres by putting a spacer on the top of the cylinder block of the 4.8 litres cars, buying an extra 400cc and designing a new set of twin 4-valve per cylinder heads. And if you did look at the video a few months ago, we did a full rebuild on Harry's gearbox, Harry Metcalf's gearbox. He's got the most wonderful Quattrovalvole. We also did a top-end overhaul on the engine and a few other bits and pieces. And his car is a right-hand drive QV, one of the 18, I think. But that particular car, the black one, is a US-spec car, because in the late 1980s, they began to be a little more accessible in terms of bringing cars into the US, Countaches and other Italian exotics. They started to get round the emission laws and the safety laws. They put generally these large tacky bumpers on them to absorb 5-mile-an-hour parking impacts, which was law in the US. Yeah, a lot of people, particularly in San Francisco on the steep hills, had mechanical parking sensors. When it went crunch, you knew you'd reached the limit of your particular direction while parking. So you crunched the other way, and then et cetera, et cetera. Nothing against San Francisco car parkers. People do this all over the world. But yeah, anyway, we'll probably have to edit that out. So I'll press on. So the QV came out. Giulio Alfieri was incredibly proud of that engine because it was claimed to be one of the most thermodynamically efficient petrol engines in the world at the time in terms of horsepower per litre of petrol. So this particular car is a US-spec car with the two Bosch Cagetronic injection systems on it, almost identical to the Ferrari Testarossa setup. And it is claimed that the US-spec cars are 30 bhp down on the downdraft cars, which have become a thing now in their own right, the downdraft Countach. Like Harry's, with the carburetors in the middle, a bank of 6 downdraft Webers. But they do stop the visibility through the rearview mirror. You've got this great big power bulge because they're in the middle. So the downdraft carburetor era was over with the QV engines, but there's sort of become this distinction between the downdraft carbs and the US-spec cars. And I'm going to take that black car for a run for the first time, and I'll just going to see how powerful that feels, having driven many downdraft QVs. I have never actually driven a US-spec Countach, so we'll do that next, and yeah, that will be quite an interesting revelation, actually. Well, here we are on the road. The car is in very good health, actually. It was something of an unknown, this car, and we do talk about fixing the fuel injection system on an earlier video. This is the first time I've driven this car. In fact, it's the first time I've driven a US-spec Quattrovalvole. It's all tuned up, it's balanced up. I've spent some time getting everything right, and all the temperatures are just lovely. Oil pressure's good. 5 kilograms per centimetre, which is about where it should be at this revs when it's warm. The clutch is about the right weight. I can tell when I drive a car like this how much wear is left on the clutch, generally by the pedal pressure, because these old-fashioned diaphragm clutches, this is a Fichtel and Sass diaphragm clutch. As they wear, the geometry changes of the fingers against the driven plate, and the clutch effectively gets heavier, and then it will start slipping, and then it really is all over. If you're not careful, you start to burn the flywheel and the pressure plate, but the clutch is comparatively light for a Countach. Still heavy, but that tells me that the clutch should be in good order. So I'm just going to see what those 420 horses give us. Here we go. Oh! There's not much difference there between a downdraft and this confirms my thoughts. This is still a very eager, very fast car. There is no question of this being strangulated or choked in any way. Yes, the 2 throttle bodies on this fuel injection system may not convey as much air as the 12 throttle bodies with restricted venturis in the Weber downdraft Weber carburetors on the other spec QV cars. But this is still a fast machine. It really is, and I'm very happy with the way the engine's running. It's very docile. I mean, that's pulling from very low RPM there. Yeah, the car is tracking straight and true. All the work we've done on the brakes, etc., is fine. The suspension is unforgiving, as Countach's normally are, but that's okay. And this road is the perfect non-surface to check that out on, but very happy. And the noise is just as nice as it ever was out of a QV. You don't quite have the induction roar that you have with the downdraft Webers, but I can actually see out of the rear view mirror. I have some visibility. I'm not just relying on the door mirrors like I am in the downdraft cars. So everything's a balance in life. Message here is, this is not quite as clear-cut an inferior car to the downdraft as people would have you believe. I'm just going to try that acceleration again, just because I can. Oh, there's nothing wrong with that. Nothing at all. This is a beast. This is a beast. Lovely, lovely noise. The engine is very healthy. Gearbox is very sweet. I can change through all the gears. Beautifully slick. I'll just try, give it the ultimate test, which is down to second. Beautiful. Yeah, very good synchromesh. This is for me a bit of an eye-opener today. As I say, never driven an American spec fuel injection Quattrovalvole, but this is still a fast car. I'd be very happy living with this. Yeah. We'll just try it again. Oh, nothing wrong with that. Thank you very much. I think there was a bit of marketing something or other going on with 420 brake horsepower versus 450. It's very interesting. The market now is demanding downdraft cars, but this is plenty quick enough. Plenty quick enough. Well, that concludes another Tyrrell's Classic Workshop video. Hope you've enjoyed it. Please remember to like and subscribe, and we'll be back with something else very soon.